Governor Corbett's budget proposal has been presented and appropriations hearings are complete. Now that lawmakers have had a chance to study it, what parts are likely to change? Let's spend 5 minutes on the state budget with State Representative Stephen Bloom. Representative Bloom, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be here.
As we mentioned, the education budget is probably the biggest concern at this point because of reductions proposed by the governor. Where do you see it all going?
Well, there's a couple things that we need to talk about when we think about this budget proposal, which first of all is a proposal. In other words, the executive branch has now put forth its idea for how we're going to spend the tax dollars in Pennsylvania for the coming fiscal year. Now it's up to us as a legislature to essentially negotiate with the executive branch to come up with a proposal and an actual final budget that all the parties can agree to. Some of the good things about Governor Corbett's budget as proposed, and the biggest good thing, is that it actually reduces spending. For the first time probably in a generation or two, we have a budget that's lower than the previous governor's budget. And it does not raise taxes, as the governor promised on the campaign trail over and over again that he would not do. So the key there, the budget is a reduction in spending, and it doesn't raise taxes. But once you dig down a little deeper into some of the numbers, it does seem that the budget disproportionately reduces some of the funding for basic education and higher education in Pennsylvania. And I believe, especially having attended some of the hearings, the appropriation hearings in the past 2 weeks over the subject of higher education and basic education, I think what you're going to see is some pushback from the legislature, myself included, to restore some of the funding back into those educational areas that are so important to Pennsylvania's future, and look for some offsetting cuts we can make on a dollar-for-dollar basis, perhaps in some of the other areas where we spend taxpayer dollars.
Now I know agriculture is also very important to your district. How does the budget treat agriculture?
You know, the budget's really hard on agriculture. I was surprised when I saw that, and I dug deeper into the numbers. Not only are the headline numbers for agriculture cut in a lot of ways, some of the basic programs that you would see under the agricultural line item in the budget, but there's also a fairly substantial backdoor cut to agriculture through the extension programs that are funded as part of the funding that the state gives to Penn State as our land-grant university. So you'll see massive reductions in funding for ag extension and agricultural research if the budget stands as it is. And I have already talked to the appropriations chair to let him know that it's important to the folks in the agricultural community, which is the #1 industry in Pennsylvania, that we don't sacrifice the ability to properly fund those key agricultural programs that sustain our agricultural industry and help folks create a safe and sustainable food supply for Pennsylvanians and the entire nation.
Now certainly if the cuts to education and agriculture can be restored, the money has to come from somewhere. Where
Right.
do you think savings can be realized?
Right. Well, what the governor didn't do, and I personally was very surprised by this because I expected that he would, the Department of Public Welfare is one of the other major areas where our state spends taxpayer dollars. The Auditor General of our state completed a fiscal audit of the Department of Public Welfare and found over $1 billion in fraud and abuse within that department. And we need to dig in and find out where that is and make the cuts accordingly so that we aren't wasting taxpayer dollars. And that's where I think you'll see the House of Representatives and probably the Senate both push back against the governor's budget and say, you know what, we've got to make some deeper cuts over here where we know there's documented fraud and abuse in the Department of Public Welfare, and restore some of that funding that we can identify on an offsetting basis over to higher education and basic education, so that we aren't, again, disproportionately impacting those. We've all got to tighten our belts. The legislature is tightening its belt, and we understand that across the board there's going to be some hard decisions made, but we don't want the impact to be disproportional on education and agriculture when there's some other areas that still need to be trimmed.
Now some are suggesting a Marcellus Shale tax, a specific tax for extraction should be enacted in addition to the taxes already paid by the Marcellus Shale owners and industry. How do you feel about it?
Well, the problem is the key thing is what you said at the end of your question, Tom. The Marcellus Shale industry is already being taxed in Pennsylvania. There's a myth out there that seems to promote the idea that these folks are coming into the state and doing all this drilling and making all this money and aren't paying a dime in taxes. Couldn't be further from the truth. They're paying tens of millions of dollars in taxes already at the corporate level. In addition, though, what I think is more exciting and more important to Pennsylvania's future, the money they're paying out to landowners in terms of royalties, the wages they're paying to employees as they grow jobs. There's over 144,000 jobs now in the Marcellus Shale industry, the gas extraction industry, and related enterprises. So we're growing jobs, we're generating huge amounts of actual new sustainable income for Pennsylvanians. Those Pennsylvanians are paying taxes through their ordinary income taxes, the sales taxes, the things they buy. And so we're seeing large increases in revenue flowing to the state treasury, in particular from the counties where the most Marcellus Shale gas wells have been drilled. So Pennsylvania natural gas represents the future of the economic sustainability of our state. And so to put an extra tax when we're already in an environment where Pennsylvania has the second highest business taxes in the world, we don't need an extra tax. We need to just continue to encourage that growth of jobs and growth of real sustainable economic prosperity for the whole state.
We're just about out of time, but one quick last question. On-time budget?
I think we're going to have an on-time budget this year. I know our leadership in the House is highly committed to that. I know the governor's committed to that. I'd be surprised, and in fact, I think it would be a real failure on the part of our caucus and our leadership if we don't get together with the governor and sign an on-time budget this year.
Thank you, Representative. If you have any comments or questions about this or any other legislative topic, Representative Bloom's contact information will be on the screen in a few minutes. I'm Tom Pine. Thanks for spending 5 minutes with State Representative Stephen Bloom.